There is no way that people will manage hundreds of digital assets and will drive their digital transformation without a digital adoption platform. It just won't work. So right now it was the phase to get everything digitized. Now is the phase to really get ROI. Companies will look at their entire digital portfolio and say, hey, that's what I'm going to double down. That's what I'm going to drop. This is where I need to change. And there is no way to do it without digital adoption platform.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Zero to Exit. This is Ankur and Nilima. In today's show, we are excited to have Dan Adika, co-founder and CEO of WalkMe, a digital adoption platform company. Dan started WalkMe in 2011 when product-led adoption and growth wasn't a thing. Dan grew the company from zero to over 150 million in ARR and just recently took the company public. If you want to build great products with product-led growth and bottoms-up sales motion, you don't want to miss this episode. Hi, Dan. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me.
First of all, congrats on the IPO.
Thank you.
What does this milestone mean for you?
Wow. On a personal level, this is something that we worked really hard towards. And I like to compare sometimes entrepreneurs to athletes. So this is probably getting into the Olympics. We didn't get the medal yet, but we qualified. So that's a huge achievement. I would say, as a CEO of the company, I think it put us in the big league now. We need to scale the company as a public company and not just as private. When we have our three, four investors, now we have the public as investors. We need to show that we can scale in a completely different way. So overall, it's overwhelming but exciting, and it's like starting from scratch now.
How does it change you personally? You're a product builder, tinkerer. At best, you're answering to the board, which is a grind. But now you gotta answer to hundreds of thousands of investors and analysts. What specific change did you have to make personally to get ready for this milestone?
Yeah, so we're public only 3 months now, 2.5, 3 months. So we had one quarter checked, so that was great. I don't think we changed. I do think that we knew it's coming, so we prepared, and I spoke with a lot of other CEOs, my friends, the two companies public. Um, so it's not that bad as it sounds. At the end of the day, if you have a very clear target and you're very direct with your messaging, you just need to continue and execute. So I don't think something changed. On a personal level, I do think that I feel much more responsibility now, especially when everybody can see their stock price going up and down every day. So it's much more real than it used to be. But other than that, we're very focused on the vision and where we're taking the company.
Love it. Milima and I both are product builders, and we've used WalkMe in the past and have used Pendo. Perhaps, like, just to level set, maybe start off by describing what the product does, but then also go back in time and describe how did the idea come about. You were an engineer at HP, and then you started this thing. Nobody knew product-led growth, etc. So maybe start with those two things.
So I would start with digital adoption platform first. I don't know if most of the listener knows or not, but WalkMe has two main use cases. One is WalkMe for employees, and one is WalkMe for customers. This is where we're seeing more the product analytics companies. But our main goal is to allow companies to get the most ROI of their technology and their investment in technology. And companies today are spending hundreds of millions of dollars buying applications, and they're doing it because they want to be better. They want to improve their processes. They want to forecast better. They want to sell better. They want to convert better, and so on and so on. So they're going and buy all those applications, and that's what we're calling digital transformation. They're basically taking all their processes and they're digitizing their entire flow. And this is where WalkMe comes into play. On one hand, to the management, we give full visibility into their digital assets. And it can be their own product, where you see the product analytics, but it can be third party applications like Salesforce, like Workday, like SuccessFactors, and so on. So we're actually, our main, I would say, persona is the CIO, where the CIO is owning those massive budget, and they're putting WalkMe to understand exactly how their end users, which can be employees and customers and so on, actually using those applications. And we're not focusing on the UI or the feature set in an application. We're more focusing on business processes. So, for example, a company wants to improve their quote to cash, or a company wants to improve their overall approval process. This is where WalkMe will come in. So, one is on the data piece, the other is the visualize, which is the user experience, the guidance. So, that's what we created, and I would connect it to how we started with the idea. We can overlay WalkMe on top of any application, and we can show you exactly what to do as you're actually doing it. We're literally like a GPS taking you step by step, showing you exactly what to do and how to do it. And I think the big evolvement of the product is that now we're not just allowing you to make those better user experiences, we're actually starting to tell you where you're having issues. So we can analyze your business processes, understand them, and tell you, hey, we're seeing that your AEs are getting stuck when they're trying to create a quote in their CPQ, and this is exactly where you need help. So the idea originated from one of our co-founders, and that's we're always telling this story, but it's really true story. His mom was driving him crazy on the phone. How do I do this? How do I do that? It was mainly on their bank website. How do I download my last activities? How do I order a credit card and so on? And everybody experienced it, or with their mother, or with their father, or with their grandparents, and so on. When like you see the button on the left, yes, click on it, and so on. And he said, how there is like nothing that can literally show them what to do as they're actually doing it. Like why there is no GPS in the digital world. That was the main idea. And obviously the challenge is very difficult because unlike the physical world, when it's already mapped and then you have the GPS that get the signals and know where you are so it can tell you how to get from point A to point B, the digital world is endless. You're building new products, new features, new pages all the time. And we needed to build something that will work on any application without us knowing the application beforehand, without us coding all the time. We needed a way to actually understand and learn the UI. So this is how we started. So we had a great idea. And sometimes, you know a great idea, you're like, there isn't something like that already, right? That's everybody thinks it's obvious, and there wasn't, and we needed to build it. So that's how we started. Back in the day, as you said, it was completely different. I would say in VC terms as well. Today you're seeing seed rounds and A rounds, very big, only with a presentation. We actually built a product. It worked in production, and only then we went and raised money. But that was wow, it was 10 years ago, a
Yeah.
little bit less, 9.5. And yeah, it was a crazy journey.
Dan, you mentioned there is WalkMe for enterprises and then WalkMe for the product. Did you have the two personas and the areas defined from day one, or did you discover those over time?
Yeah, so it's WalkMe for employees and WalkMe for customers. It can be any
Okay,
size
perfect.
of company, but we started mainly on the idea where the original idea came from, which is the bank website. So we were very, very much focused on external use cases, not even product use cases. It was more companies that has a website, and through the website they give you a service, like a bank, like insurance companies, like government. And the main focus was reduction of support calls. Instead of you calling a representative asking how to do something, WalkMe can just show you how to do it. That's how we started. That was all we knew. We didn't even know what Salesforce back in the day. And only when we started to grow and implement technology, we understood that the internal problem for the employees is as big as the external problem. And that's how we started. But we discovered a lot along the way. We're still discovering, by the way. But I think that's the beauty of being agile and react to the market. So we started with one problem. I think we weren't a typical startup. A lot of the time, startups already like to tell you how they will conquer the world. We weren't like that. Actually, every 2 years, we discovered that the TAM The total addressable market for WalkMe is much bigger than we thought 2 years ago. And then we kept building and kept building and kept building until in 2017, 18, we actually come up with what we call today digital adoption platform, and we created a category. But before that, we didn't even know what to call ourselves. Like it was
Right.
navigation tool, guidance tool, engagement tool, you name it.
Going back to again early days, I believe in phase one of your journey, as you were figuring this out, you barely had any outbound marketing as well, right? You mentioned that all your leads were inbound. Tell us a little more about that.
So when you create something new, especially when people don't know what it is, and even when you explain them what it is, they're not sure they understand because it's not. We couldn't compare ourselves to anything else. We could have said GPS for the digital world or GPS for your website. That was our tagline back in the day. No one's looking for you, so we couldn't call someone and say, "Hey, what are you using today in order to do digital adoption? What are you talking about?" Right? They don't even know what you're trying to do. So we needed to figure out a way to market ourselves. So what we did, and it might sound trivial, but it's really hard at the beginning. We took all the problems that we're solving and we started to market the problem. So funnel conversion, feature adoption, and so on and so on. We had probably 30, 35 use cases, and then we marketed them. And then from there, they got to a landing page, then from the landing page to a lead to WalkMe, where then we would call them and explain them what WalkMe is. And that was the motion at the beginning. Not even in the beginning, I would say that the first 4 or 5 years, that's exactly how we operated from, I would say, 13 to 17. And we just created tons of inbound leads that we converted with a full sales cycle, right? It wasn't a low touch. We just needed to create a demand. And then once you got in, an SDR qualified the call, an AE take the lead, and then close the deal end to end.
When there are 12 to 14 use cases, and I come from orchestration world, very similar situation. You got leads, but when downstream you have to actually implement those use cases, you are either prescriptive or you're discovering. In those early days, were the use cases actually ballooning from 12 to 14, or there were those 12 to 14 use cases that would get implemented later on?
So that's a great question. So what we did, and that was our focus in our product, we created this no code editor that basically our customers can build whatever they want. So yeah, we gave them the direction, we had customer success, helping them onboard and giving them the use cases. But at the end of the day, they could build anything they wanted. And just from what our customer built, we discovered more use cases. And we had customers that using WalkMe to remind their customers on billing and payments. We had customers that using WalkMe to block things on their website. So instead of removing stuff, they just used WalkMe as that layer. So we started to see a lot of use cases becoming or evolving from our customers' use in the product. And from, I would say, pretty early on, we worked really hard on community. So we had our customers sharing and talking with each other and talking with us. And that helps us shape the product even more. And then it crisps the messaging to those certain use cases.
Was bulk of the marketing just the classic SEO, SEM? You talked about community stuff. Were there also like inherent virality? How important is virality? Tell us a little bit about the techniques that led you to grow your top of the funnel.
So I would say the number one was content. Before SEO, before everything, we needed to create real quality content that people want to consume. So we talked about training, and we talked about onboarding, and we talked about efficiency, and we talked about a lot of things that people actually read. And it was quality, real quality. That allowed us two things. One, we could segment the audience in a much more precise way, because if we know that you're interested about training, you probably don't care about salespeople close rates because you're probably from the training department, so you want efficient way to do training. Same goes to product, same goes to others. So that's one thing that allows us to be much more precise. And when you're precise, the dollars you're putting towards SEO and towards targeting becoming much more efficient, because I don't need to just spray everything. We can be much more precise. So that's one thing. The second piece was actually identifying the personas. That took a lot of time, like really getting and analyze it. And the way our marketing worked was such in scientific way. We looked at 1 to 12 at the beginning, 1 to 15x return from dollar spend on advertising to pipeline creation. And that means a lot of discipline along the funnel, because we needed those signals. We needed to see when something is being converted, when something is becoming closed lost, when something is becoming nurtured. And we always looked at it and just improved and improved and improved. And we looked at two things: one is volume, two is conversion rate, right? So we wanted to see those two actually working together. And the results were mind blowing. At the beginning, it was like very high, and then we were just doubling down on what we saw that's working. But it was everything together. If people think that they will just spend money on SEO and everybody will come and buy, that won't work. At the end of the day, I'm putting everything aside. The product worked. The demo made sense. The funnel to download and testing the product worked really well for our customers. And in the beginning, we had a completely freemium, like you can go download it, play with it completely by yourself. So we had tens of thousands of downloads where people are actually trying the product themselves.
That's amazing. You spoke a little bit about the KPI, and just for our listeners' benefit, like tell us about what are some of the key KPIs that one should measure in bottoms up. What's an industry average? What does good to great look like? Is it lead to MQL, SQL conversion? Like give us a little bit of a ratio and industry benchmarks versus like what does great look like?
Yeah, I think it's changing between products. At the end of the day, I would go to the top level KPI, which is for every dollar we're spending, we want to create at least $1 in ARR. That's where it's all starts. Of course, if we can spend a dollar and create $2 in
Right.
ARR, that would be great. Obviously, with good retention rates, we're not talking about, I would say, a very low B2C SMB where you have 40 or 50% churn. We're talking about more enterprise where your net retention is always above 100. So when you actually get to a point when you can spend a dollar and make a dollar in ARR, you're in a really good place, right? And then that's the leading indicator. Now, from there, really, it's changing between company. But if your acquisition cost per lead is very high, so focus your effort on conversion, because you're spending so much money on getting the leads. If getting the leads is very cheap, so maybe the conversion is still important, but maybe less, and work how you can get more volume
Yeah.
because it's cheaper
Yeah.
for you. So I would say a good healthy is the 1 to 1, and then the way we did it is around 1 to 10 on dollar to create pipe, and then 25% conversion from pipe to close one. I would say that's best in class metrics. Obviously, there is the nuance, exactly how much it costs and what's your ASP, the average selling price. There is a lot of factors there, but based on that, we always changed. And obviously, as we grew, now it's becoming a little bit more expensive, but the deal size tripled or quadrupled. So now we can work in a different assumptions. But I would say more importantly, we had all the data all the time in front of our eyes, almost in real time. Like every week, every month, we could have seen how much we spent, how it's converting, where are the stages, and so on and so on. And that's what allowed us to spend money. At the end of the day, that's the game. You spend money in order to grow, and if the growth is efficient, it's amazing. Obviously, it's becoming harder as you grow, but when you're small, the 1, 5, 10, even 20 million ARR, this is where you need to be in a position that you can grow at least 100%. I think that companies in low ARR that are not growing at least 100%, something is wrong in the funnel. Like nothing about the company, maybe the company and the product is great, but something is wrong in the funnel. Because at the early days, we grew 500% and 300%. Those are was the growth until we got towards 100 million. And obviously the growth slowed down. But at early days, it was really on this one-to-one premise, we were able to scale very, very fast.
So, a follow up question on the early days. And so, the funnel aspects, like great insights there. But did you, I know the product could be trialed directly. How many sales guys were actively selling the product in those direct days, or it was mostly selling through the website basically, and then customer success coming in and actually helping with the implementations?
So it was mainly sales. We did have, I would say, inside sales that closing fast deals over the phone, deals that can go at like back in the days 15K, 12K, 20K, right? I'm talking about 13, 14, and then enterprise reps that closing larger deals, right? At the 50, at the 100, and so on. You always get an SDR calling first, right? Just to understand if it's the right qualification criteria that we had. Even then, and in the SDR, we worked very, very, very in scientific way. Like how much time is the best time to get someone call back, right? If it's 2 days, if it's 5 days, maybe it's too late. So we had those SLAs in place. And then when we got the person on the phone, I would say closing the deal was not that hard, but usually it was for one use case because they came to WalkMe because they wanted to do one specific thing. And then the customer success coming in, and the customer success job is, of course, showing them that there is much more than meets the eye at the beginning.
Okay.
And then, but it was always sales. It was always driven by sales. And again, I would just say we're seeing it changing, but back in the day, you wouldn't sign 20 or 25K deal online. Right? It was a lot. I remember like the
Yeah.
first product that we used, and we paid like $1,000 a month. I wanted to meet the CEO. I wanted to see it's a real company. It was a lot. Today it's different. So I would say if people thinking about it, just translate it to today's, right? To today's amount.
Yeah.
Probably you wouldn't sell over 100K online. Probably.
But are you seeing the 25K word deals being actually getting in just online than
Well,
in your ecosystem?
yeah, I think that you can get up to 25K online, especially if you have a product-led approach when they can start and try it, and then expanding it. And we saw it beautifully, right, with Slack, the way that worked, right? Like suddenly you get a phone call from them, and you didn't know you have 100 people already using it, and now you need to. I see another company, Miro. I don't know, it's a new company, but suddenly
Yep.
we're getting an
Yeah.
email. We had like 20 people using it. I don't know how, right? But by the way, that's what WalkMe solves to the CIO as well, right? With WalkMe, they know exactly what people are using, and okay, now do we want to license it? We don't want to license it. People are using it, people are not using it. But I would say products that allow that collaboration and shareness between their teams will see that organic growth because every seat, I don't know, $5, $10, in no time you hit 20K.
Yeah, I just saw a tweet yesterday. I think it was Anshu Sharma. He was saying that in an organization, the company was spending about $1,000 per employee in 2 years, 3 years back. Now it's going to be probably, I think, 5 times going forward in this world of
Yeah.
COVID. Totally agree with that. So now moving on with the journey, right? Something happened around 2014 where your business just started exploding, and you were talking about this in the prep call. You went from 1 to 5 to 40 million. What happened then?
So the machine worked. So we worked really hard to get the entire machine from lead to pipe to this pipe stages to close one to implementation and so on. I remember from my first presentations to investors, we had this really like an engine, and we saw how things are coming in and like what's the conversion rate in each step. And then we stress tested. So it worked with 500K budget, and then let's try a million, let's try 2 million, let's try 3 million, and so on. So once that worked, we could really start investing. And you would see that the sales and marketing spend grew at the same ratio, right? So if we're adding 5 million in ARR, then probably we're spending 5. And now if we're adding 20 million in ARR a year, we're probably spending 20. So that's the magic number that we had back then, 1 to 1. So we were able to scale. It worked. We had a good product market fit. There was a lot of demand, but all the internal processes worked. They just worked. And obviously, every company getting that scale and then it stops because it's too much. And then you're tweaking, you're changing the machine a bit, you're working on your processes, and you go to the next level and the next level. I can tell you that we had a big fear to get stuck at 50 million. That was our fear at the beginning because, it's not like you have at the beginning tons of leads. Now it's becoming a little bit harder. So we tweaked it. We changed the segments. We changed a little bit how we market. And eventually we found out that we need to define the category. If in 2017 we wouldn't define the category, we wouldn't grow from 50 to now almost 200. So that was another point that we needed to take. So if in 13 we started to build a machine, 4 years later we build another machine. Now in 2021 we're building another machine, right? So I would say every 3 years something need to change in order for you to grow to the next level. So in 2014 it was the machine that I just described, getting the lead in, convert them, and then close the deal in high ratios, and it worked in scale. So it was allow us to grow to 1, 5, 20, and so on.
Dan, at that time, how did the company change as well? The product grew from 1 to 5 to 40. I'm sure the team was growing as well. Talk through how you were looking inwardly towards the company, as well as you just mentioned how the external growth was happening.
Yeah. So obviously, headcount grew significantly, both in R&D, both in marketing and sales, all the supporting functions, right? Support, G&A, finance, and so on and so on. So in a very short time, we found ourselves from like a 30, 40 people, 50 people company, like to 3, 400. And I would say is the real scale because now you're not just managing 5 people that you see in the kitchen and tell them what to do. Now you need to manage different regions. Now you need to manage different teams. So the company changed from a small, tiny company to, I would say, mid-sized company, around 400 or 500 people we were back in the day, to now almost 1,000. So that's a big change that obviously stressed your operations, how you work, communication, teamwork, and so on. So obviously there is always hiccups there as well, but as long as you're data driven, you know where are your problems. I'm always telling my team, I'm worried when there is no problems. I want to know the problems. Tell me where the problems are. What we're missing. Like if I know the problem, I can fix it. If I don't know the problem, then it's just ruining everything and you don't even know it's happening. So we were very paranoid on like, I need to know the problems. And once we knew the problems, we went and fixed them. But that was, I would say, the hardest part. Scaling in terms of people was harder than scaling in terms of revenue or customers.
Yeah, you can't see the people problems through data. You have to really rely and take a leap of faith there.
Yep.
What was the hardest change for you personally as a leader in this growth phase?
Wow, I changed a lot, I think, in the past 9 years. My background is engineering, so I was very, very close to the product and engineering team at the beginning. And I moved to the US very early on in the journey, and being detached from that part and moving more to the business side and sales and all the strategy around it was the first big change for me, I would say. The second big change is that I didn't know all the employees. That was like a shock for me at the beginning. Like I saw someone at the airport and he's like, "Hey, I'm working at WalkMe," and I'm like,
Oh, wow. That's a story.
took me a second, and I'm like, I knew all the employees, and by the way, I think I now I know most of them by name. I have a really really good memory, but that was like an aha moment. Like I don't know people that work in the company. We're already 500 people. And then I went in and I read all everybody's names and roles, and I was like, I need to know everyone. But I can tell you that we did a lot of things to connect us, like every month talking with everyone on their birthday. Every new recruits, we're doing me and my co-founder the welcome meetings. Really trying to know everyone. That was a big target for us because we need to know everyone in order to create or maintain the culture that we wanted.
Now you're in the big leagues, the final stage where you want to get big, eventually go to IPO. And that is the time when you create this category. Why is category creation so important? And what are some of the ingredients to creating a category?
Yeah, so as I said, every stage of growth get to a ceiling. So at the end of the day, we couldn't keep the inbound forever. So we needed to have an outbound motion. So back in 16, 17, when we tried to do the outbound, we understood that people need a category. People need to box it in, right? I need a CRM. I need a threat detection system. I need an ERP, and so on and so on. This is how people are buying. They have those categories. So we said, okay, what are we doing? And we looked at everything and we're like, okay, people need digital adoption platform. So we came with that, we actually coined that term and we said, okay, we need to start building that category. And actually, building category is much harder than everything that I described until now because one, you need the analyst, right? It took Gartner 2 years to write about it because they're doing their job very good. They want to see that it's a real thing. They want to talk with customers. They want to see dozens of case studies. So that was one thing. Hey, let's create that category. And by the way, DApp, even though this is something that if you would write in Google, you would see vendors and people are talking about it, there is still no magic quadrant for DApp. It's still not a category as we hoped, but we're pushing towards there. And the main reason is once you have the category, one, you can do the outbound. Two, people need budget. So if you're this cool tool that they saw a demo, okay, they will pay 40, 50, 60, 100K. But when you're selling to a full enterprise, a full digital adoption platform that's going to use on older systems, that's going to be probably a little bit more costly. So which budget it coming from? So now when you have a category, we're seeing more and more CIOs putting budget for digital adoption platform. And when they're putting budget for it, they come to you. Maybe there is an RFP and so on. But people are asking me sometimes when we did the roadshow, how many times you're winning an RFP? And I'm like, I want to see RFPs first. Like I want to see that every deal come with an RFP. That means that they're ready to
Correct.
buy. Today, most of the time, we're still educating them. What is the app? How to implement it? They're not in the RFP stage yet. And this is why it's important to create a category. And by the way, this is one of the main reasons we decided to go public to increase the awareness. We're the first DApp company and we're the first public DApp company. So now people are curious because Gartner is saying, not us, that by 2025, 70% of organizations will use DApp, WalkMe or not, but they will use DApp. So, okay, how we're getting there, and hopefully faster, not by 2025. How we're getting every organization, every CIO, CDO, CEO. I want a CEO to go to their CIO and ask, which DApp platform are we using? That will be amazing for us. So that's the importance of creating that category, and it's hard. It's really hard.
I was just going to say, how worried were you that once you create a category, there's going to be 2 dozen competitors, well-funded VC firms from US, all trying to eat your lunch, being lazy because they can steal your ideas, everything.
Not really. There is no category without competitors. Like if you would see there is a category DAB, but there is only one player WalkMe, probably it's not a category. At the end of the day, we know what we're doing and we know it's hard. So obviously there will be competition, but at the end of the day, to get to where we got, it takes time. It's not that we weren't funded. We raised before the IPO over 300 million. We invested a lot of it in R&D, so it's not like, hey, let's just go and replicate it. There is real IP behind it. So we weren't as worried as I think creating the category was more a challenge for us than just the competition. I would say competition at the end of the day is healthy. You need it. You just need to be the best and always have a moat against your competitors, especially when you're the category king, like us. So when competitors started, they couldn't compete with us on the product, so they compete with us on price. They compete with us on other things, which is a great strategy from their end. And we needed to, of course, react. But it's such a blue ocean, DAP. It's such a big category and TAM that even if there will be another five big competitors, I think the market can handle it. Obviously, we want to continue be the leader.
What are some of the hacks that you've implemented internally in the company? I mean, you have some of the folks in your team have been with the company for probably a decade. It's easy to get comfortable. Oh, you're the leader. Whatever they've done is working. Have you implemented any hacks in the company to keep that innovation engine on and on?
Yeah, we did a lot of things, but I would say the number one, we are very competitive on everything. We're playing FIFA at lunch, we're competitive. We're playing ping pong, we're competitive. We're very, very competitive. So if we're losing a deal, no one is like, oh, okay, never mind. We're crushing it anyway. It's like, why? Even if it's a 10K deal.
Love it.
So we're very, very competitive. We have a very competitive team. So that's one thing. And the second piece is always surface the problem. It's okay to lose. Everybody's losing. But what we learn, what we didn't do good, like what is it pricing? Okay, is it the product? Okay, let's figure out. Do we're doing something wrong in the sales pitch? Just tell me the reason, right? Once I know the reason, okay, I can just sometimes snap my fingers and fix it, but now it's an area to improve. In 6 months we'll be in a completely different place, right? That's on us as an executive leadership team to go and turn the things around. So I would say most of the time that you would hear me talk with my team, I would just say, tell me the bad stuff. Don't want to hear the good stuff. The good stuff, go celebrate, love it. What doesn't work, we always start the conversation with it. Like if someone call me and I have bad news, I have good news, I'm like, tell me the bad news. That will be 90% of the call. So we're not a culture that celebrate every 5 seconds. We're more a culture of why that went wrong and how can we fix it.
That's the best description of growth mindset that I've heard. Focus on the problems, rest will fall in place. Great insights so far, Dan. You've seen a ton of SaaS products through the lenses of WalkMe now. What advice would you have for product builders to improve product adoption?
One, before I'm getting into the product itself, but are you actually solving the problem? That's number one. I can tell you in the first 1 or 2 years with WalkMe, even though we had a lot of customers, I wanted to see the problem solved. So conversion rate goes up without WalkMe. Prove me that you're actually solving the problem, and not just talking about how to solve the problem. It's actually solved. I remember when it happened, when we had like statistical coherency about, hey, with and without WalkMe, it's worked much better with WalkMe. I was like, whew, it's working. It's really working. It's not about like the features of the product and so on. That's first thing. The second piece, we used WalkMe on WalkMe and data from day zero, meaning everything we're highlighting, we're guiding our users, a lot of communication around it. We are our own customers. WalkMe is the biggest WalkMe customer. That was something that we're still pushing. So I'm telling my product team, and sometimes we're doing a great job, sometimes we're not doing that of a good job. But if you're not using your own tool to do what you're trying to do, then how you can expect others? So I would say those are the three things. One, make the product accessible, and it's not about sleek UI. It's about actually solving the product and making sure that it makes sense for them to actually work on it. And I will add the fourth piece, and this is just me. I'm not sure a lot of people. Performance. Product needs to work fast. Like enterprise B2B products usually don't invest in performance. I had people asking me, why it's so important to you that the login will be below 2 seconds? I'm like, because it's a standard. That's where we want to be. It should be fast. You wouldn't upload a version with an SQL injection in it, right? You wouldn't. So why you're uploading that feature when it takes 10 seconds to load? Like, what's the difference? Both bad. I would say performance really solve the problem. And those are the two of the four things that I just mentioned. But solving the problem, that's big.
Which SaaS product in your experience are the stickiest? Like, give us a few examples of the gold standards in your view.
Yeah, I would just give a disclaimer that in some of them I'm an investor. Just
Uh-oh.
because that's my investment philosophy. Product that we like in WalkMe, I go and invest. But I would give you few that are doing a fantastic job. One is Gong. I remember I met Amit on an airplane from Tel Aviv to San Francisco. He gave me a demo, and I'm like, okay, let's try it. We tried it, and I'm like, boom, that's it. That's exactly what we need. It solved the problem. We needed to get our eyes on every call because we were scaling, and without that, we wouldn't know what's going on. We used to have 10 sellers so I could hear them. Now we have 40 sellers, 50 sellers. They're not sitting at the office. How would we know that they're doing a good job? So I'm putting aside, right, like the product itself. It solved exactly what we needed. And once it solved it, we decided that we're doing it. And once we decided that we're doing it, right, they got the adoption because if it's coming from the CRO, the CEO saying, hey, that's what we're doing, I need that, then everybody will adopt it if you want it or not. Usually product that are not being adopted is product that coming sometimes from bottom, and that specific function doesn't have a lot of power in the organization. So if that's your motion, you need to make sure that that group has a lot of power. And I would give you the second piece is Slack. Slack, our sales team didn't want to use Slack. By the way, I'm not sure how much you're using it today. On the other hand, our R&D and product teams and support teams loved Slack. So they just dictated to the entire organization from bottom up that we're going to use Slack. And that was I'm talking before Slack was the monster that they are today. They're huge. Talking about early days, that's how they did it. So see, those are two things that, and I must be on, like I was against Slack at the beginning. I was like, no, we have GChat. Just use GChat. Why I need to pay more for Slack, right? But I didn't have any choice, even though I'm the CEO. They're like all using it and mandating it. So those are two different examples. Gong came from us, came from CRO, CEO, boom, down. Actually, the reps at the beginning are like, what, are you gonna listen to every call now? That's creepy. Now Gong did an amazing job. It's the standard. But at the beginning, it was like, hey, this is a little bit of a big brother. And on the other hand, Slack got so many good features. They knew exactly what developers need with integrations, with automations, with allowing them to create their own bots and completely killed it. So those are two examples of products that we really like today.
But if I'm a SaaS product builder, I mean, I'm looking at a million things. I'm looking at page views and visitors and DAO and MAU and DAO divided by MAU. That's like stickiness and adoption. I mean, it's just like this, like KPIs galore. Like, what are the leading or lagging indicator of stickiness and or churn? Like, you got to focus on a couple, three things. Are there
Yeah,
those from a KPI perspective? And if so, what are those?
we invented some metric in WalkMe. We call it adoption score.
Ah,
That at the end of the day, it's a predictive things to churn. But what we did at the end of the day, we look at how much value our customers are getting from our product. Meaning, let's say you use WalkMe in order to deflect calls. And let's say we're deflecting 3% of your call and you have 100K calls a month. So we're saving you, whatever, let's call it 80K a month. You're paying us 20K a month. Doesn't matter if you like us, if you hate us, if you're logged into the product or not. We're saving you 80K a month. That's what important. So there is other, of course, indicators that showing that if you do it, you will get the value. But if you can get to a very clear metric, are you showing value or not? And it's hard. That should be the number one metric. All the rest, it's different. Some did a good job. They don't need to log into the product every day. Some logging into the product every day, but it doesn't mean anything because they're not the economic buyer. They love WalkMe. They're creating tons of content, and then the CFO comes and say, "Okay, that cost me 50K. Where are the savings?" People leave jobs. So the fact that you have a very good champion, that champion might leave. So we change the mindset. It's not about the champion, it's not about just the usage, it's about the value. Does the customer sees value? And by the way, does he approve that that value is correct? And if we get that box checked, zero churn. Like no one, like unless they're bankrupting or huge merger, why would they churn? Why would they leave? They're getting real value. So that's, I would say, the number one metric that the product team need to look at. Does it create value?
Great insight. So in the WalkMe space, we talked about there are about 10 to 12 players in this space. What's next for this industry?
So as I said, I think DAP is just in the beginning, maybe 2-3% penetration to the market. I think we'll see it like the RPA, even bigger. It will explode. There is no way that people will manage hundreds of digital assets and will drive their digital transformation without a digital adoption platform. It just won't work. So right now it was the phase to get everything digitized. Now is the phase to really get ROI. Companies will look at their entire digital portfolio and say, hey, that's what I'm going to double down. That's what I'm going to drop. This is where I need to change. And there is no way to do it without digital adoption platform. Like there is literally no way to do it. So I think that category will grow. And obviously that's good news for the competitors as well. It's really just in the beginning. And I do think that we will see some interesting integrations with automation and process mining and process discovery. You will see more and more and more companies starting to use the term DAP and digital adoption platform because people understand at the end of the day that the human is in the center of it. So even if you replace the human with bots and everything and so on, still you have someone that builds the process and define the process to the bot. So you need to define the right process and you need to be agile. So yeah, we're very bullish, of course, and optimistic.
That was awesome, Dan. Look, as the fellow product builders, Nilima and I can spend hours and hours getting pearls of wisdom from you on how to build an amazing product. But I know you've got a publicly traded company to manage weekdays and weekends, so we're going to let you go. Thank you so very much for taking the time. I know your teams are competitive and they're looking at Monday.com's stock and market cap. So here's wishing you 7x more success than where you are today in future.
On our way. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the
Thank you,
conversation.
Dan.
Thank you, Dan.